Zoe Walker didn't mind long drives. In fact, they gave her a kind of peace, especially when the world felt too loud, too heavy. The winding stretch of County Road 6 was familiar, comforting. It was the road she'd taken home from Grandma Lula's 100 times before. Gospel music hummed low from her phone speaker, her voice quietly filling the car as she sang along to a melody her grandmother taught her as a child. The air outside was still, warm with the last gold of a Georgia summer, and her windows were cracked just enough to let in the pine-scented breeze. She was less than 20 minutes from home. When the red and blue lights burst into her rearview mirror, Zoe's hands instinctively gripped the wheel tighter. Her foot eased off the gas, her chest clenched. She glanced at her speedometer. She wasn't speeding. There were no stop signs missed, no signals ignored. Still, she flicked on her right turn signal and guided her sedan onto the gravel shoulder. The crunch beneath her tires sounded too loud, too final. The cruiser pulled up close. Too close. The front bumper nearly kissed her license plate. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Her window rolled halfway down. She placed her left hand at the top of the wheel, her right resting on her thigh, visible, deliberate. 2 white officers stepped out. The older one walked with the weight of authority, thick-shouldered and stiff-faced. No polite mask, no warmth. The younger man followed closely behind, thinner, but his gaze was sharp, already scanning Zoe's car like it had something to hide. "Is there a problem, officer?" Zoe asked, her voice firm, even as her heartbeat thudded in her ears. The older man didn't smile. "License and registration," he said, tone clipped. She passed them through the window, eyes never leaving his. She saw how his eyes flicked, not just at her ID, but down toward the neckline of her shirt. The younger officer had made his way behind her car, fingers grazing the edge of his holster like muscle memory. The questions came next. Where was she coming from? Where was she headed? Did she have any drugs, weapons, or items they should know about? Her voice stayed level, answers short and clear. When the older officer leaned down and said, "Mind if I take a quick look inside?" She didn't flinch. "Yes, I do mind," she said. "You don't have my consent." The silence that followed was taut. He chewed on her refusal with his jaw tight, then said, "Step out of the vehicle." "Am I being detained?" No answer. Boots on gravel. The younger officer now stood just outside her door, blocking her view of the road. She caught his scent, cheap cologne, sweat, the faint tang of leather and gun oil. She knew this wasn't about a traffic stop. It wasn't about her taillight or a mistaken identity. It was about her presence on this road, her skin, her car on this side of town. Zoe opened the door slowly, hands still in view. The sun hit her face, and for a split second, everything looked too bright. "Turn around," the older officer said. "Why?" she asked, not challenging, just asking because she needed to hear them say it, needed to give the system one more chance to do something right. No explanation, just a nod. She felt the hand first, on her shoulder, pushing, not hard, but firm enough to know he wasn't waiting for compliance. The metal of the hood burned against her palms. The younger officer's footsteps behind her made the gravel hiss. She glanced sideways. Still no one on the road, still no backup, still no reason. Then she saw it, his hand reaching into the car, toward her purse. "You can't do that," she said, louder now. The shove came harder this time, her chest pressed into the hood. She struggled to find breath. "You have no right!" she yelled. The sound that followed came from behind her, a click. Metallic, subtle, but unmistakable. She stopped moving. Everything stopped moving. There were no more words to be said. And then, in the same second her mind told her to hold still, to breathe, to survive, came the first gunshot. She didn't feel the impact, only the spinning. Her body shifting sideways as her knees failed. Her cheek met gravel. The sun above dimmed. The second shot was louder, or maybe she was quieter. Her vision blurred, but she saw the horn, saw it pressed by the force of her body. It wailed in one long, endless cry. Then came the voices, low, urgent. practiced. "She went for my gun," the older officer said. "She resisted. She forced our hand." She heard none of it. Not really. Only the hum of the horn, the taste of dust, the thought of her grandma's fried catfish, and the ache in her side that felt like a hole. Somewhere nearby, someone placed something in her hand. Metal, cold, small. A knife? Her knife? No. She didn't own one. She wanted to scream, to say, "You're lying," to say, "I didn't do anything," to ask why. But the words never came. The silence pressed heavier than any bullet. And as the world began to dim, the last thing Zoe thought of wasn't fear. It was her father's voice. "Always keep your hands where they can see them, baby girl." And how even that hadn't saved her. The coroner pronounced her dead on arrival. The report would say she was combative, that she reached for a weapon, that the officers acted in self-defense. There would be no mention of the shaky body cam footage that malfunctioned. No mention of the radio call that never happened. No dash cam, no third-party witness. Just 2 officers, 1 dead black woman, and a script the department had practiced a dozen times before. Officer Travis Boone stood with his arms crossed, eyes shielded by dark glasses, even though the sun had started to set. He watched as Zoe's body was lifted onto a stretcher, her blood soaked into the roadside dust. "You okay?" asked Officer Derek Fenn, his voice tight, like he wasn't sure which emotion he was supposed to show, relief or guilt. Boone didn't look at him. "Just another day, Fenn." "She didn't have a weapon," Fenn muttered. Boone glanced sideways, slow and heavy. "She does now." He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing a parking ticket, not planting a knife in a dead girl's hand. Fenn's mouth opened, but no words came. He turned away, jaw clenched, hands trembling as he rubbed them down his uniform. Miles away, Isaiah Walker stood in his garage, hands blackened with engine grease, head half inside the hood of his truck. The old Chevy hadn't purred like it used to in years, but tinkering helped him sleep. He'd just replaced the carburetor when the phone rang, landline, the only one he kept. "Mr. Walker?" The voice on the other end was calm, too calm. "This is Ashfield County Hospital. I'm sorry to inform you." Time stopped. Isaiah didn't drop the wrench. He didn't scream, didn't stumble. He stood there, surrounded by metal and dust, his daughter's name echoing against concrete walls. The house was quiet when he got back inside. Pictures lined the hallway. Zoe at 5 in a Halloween costume, Zoe at 11 holding her first violin, Zoe at her college graduation last spring. Isaiah's shadow passed over each one like a cloud. He sat at the kitchen table, the phone cradled in his lap. He hadn't called anyone, not yet. Not Zoe's mother, not Pastor Timmons, not even Lula, who was probably making dinner right now, expecting her granddaughter to text when she got home. He stared at the wood grain in the tabletop, its grooves deepened with age. Like him, he replayed every conversation he'd ever had with Zoe about traffic stops, about rules, about survival. Keep your hands visible, speak clearly, be respectful, but never scared. And if something doesn't feel right, don't run, don't fight, just make it home. She did everything right. Still, she hadn't made it home. Outside, the town of Ashfield moved like nothing had happened. Kids played in sprinklers, radios hummed with country ballads. A man mowed his lawn 2 doors down. The local news mentioned an incident. A tragic misunderstanding. An officer-involved shooting. No name, no age, no humanity. Just a paragraph on the 6 o'clock broadcast between the weather report and a story about a rescued dog. Isaiah sat in his truck long after the sun disappeared. He didn't cry. He didn't pray. He opened the glove box, pulled out an old cigar box wrapped in duct tape. Inside, a photograph of Zoe at age 7, a chain with his military dog tags, and a medal he never wore. He held the chain in his palm, the cool metal warming slowly with the heat of his skin. Then finally he spoke, not loudly, not angrily, just a whisper. "They killed my girl." He looked up, eyes narrowed, voice steady. "Now they're going to have to explain why." The morgue was colder than Isaiah expected. Not in temperature, though it was that too, but in something deeper. A stillness. A silence that felt rehearsed. The hallway leading to the autopsy room smelled like bleach and steel. The kind of place that made people whisper, even when no one was around. Isaiah walked with the steady rhythm of a man used to tension, his boots echoing off tile. A young clerk led him in. She looked about Zoe's age. Her voice cracked once when she said, "This way, sir." But she kept moving, eyes straight ahead. Isaiah didn't speak, didn't nod, just followed. They reached a set of swinging doors. She stopped. They've already prepared her for identification," she said. He looked at her for the first time. Her face was pale. Her fingers clutched the clipboard like it might float away. "You sure you want to do this alone?" she asked, not out of policy, out of fear for what it might do to him. "I've been alone for worse," Isaiah said. Inside, the overhead lights buzzed faintly. The air was thick, stale. Stainless steel gleamed under the fluorescence. Cold drawers lined the walls like silent sentinels. Zoe lay on the center table, covered to the chest by a white sheet. Her skin looked too pale, her lips too blue, as if the life had been scrubbed from her rather than taken. Isaiah stood at the foot of the table for a long while. His eyes traced every inch of what they had done to his daughter. The bruising near her collarbone, the gunshot wound high on her side, just below the ribs, the second one, at the base of her abdomen. Both fatal, both avoidable. Her face was peaceful. That hurt more than if it had been twisted in fear. "She was calm," he whispered, "even then." He moved closer, resting a hand on the table's edge. His fingers trembled, barely. He remembered when she was born, screaming louder than any baby in the ward. He remembered how she used to fall asleep in his lap, mouth open, head tilted, just like now. Only now she wouldn't wake. A voice interrupted. "We can give you a moment." Isaiah turned. The coroner stood respectfully in the doorway, middle-aged, tired eyes, hands folded over a clipboard. "I read the report," Isaiah said. The coroner hesitated. "And?" "There's no sign of powder burns on her hands, no bruises on the officers, but she was labeled combative." The coroner shifted. "That was based on officer testimony. We don't make legal conclusions. Do you see anything here that says she fought back?" A long pause. "No, sir." Isaiah nodded once. "Then write that down." The coroner didn't argue, just made a note. Later, Isaiah sat in his truck, the doors still open to the late morning heat. The hospital parking lot buzzed with activity. Doctors, nurses, people laughing at something on their phones. The world spun, business as usual. He took the manila folder from his lap, Zoe's preliminary autopsy, and flipped it open again. His eyes scanned every line, committing them to memory. Then he looked at the last photo, the one taken at the scene. Gravel. Blood. Her arm outstretched like she was reaching for something, or someone. He put the photo down. He didn't scream, didn't cry, just drove. He ended up at the edge of town in the field behind Zoe's old high school. The bleachers were still there, half rusted, where he used to watch her play flute in the marching band. He sat on the bottom row, elbows on knees, watching the breeze roll across the tall grass. "You always hated this place," he said aloud. "Too many bugs?" He laughed once, bitter, quiet. Then he opened his wallet. Inside was a folded slip of paper, Zoe's handwriting, a note she'd left him years ago before leaving for college. "Love you, Dad. Don't forget to breathe." His thumb brushed over the ink. Isaiah pulled out his phone. Not to call anyone, not yet. Instead, he opened a folder of old messages, voicemails Zoe had left. He pressed play. Her voice filled the cab. "Hey, I made it to Grandma's. She fed me like she thinks I'm still 12. Heading home soon. Love you." He sat there, listening. Once, twice, 3 times. Each word was a blade and a balm. That night, Isaiah opened the safe in his bedroom closet. Inside, neatly stacked, a discharge letter, a folded flag, a sidearm wrapped in cloth, and a set of photos from his deployment days. He didn't touch the gun. He picked up the photo. In it, a younger Isaiah stood with his unit in the desert. Sunburnt, dirty, alive. One of those men never made it back. Isaiah stared at the picture, then closed the safe. He wasn't going to war. Not yet. But something had shifted inside him. Not rage. Not even grief. Purpose. Zoe deserved the truth. And he was going to find it. The Ashfield Police Department stood like an old courthouse. Red brick, square windows, a flag out front that never stopped fluttering. It was built to look honest. Dependable. Isaiah Walker knew better. He sat in his truck across the street, engine off, watching people come and go through the front doors. Uniforms laughed, coffee in hand. Civilians filled out forms at the front desk. Nothing about the building suggested it was the place where his daughter's name had been twisted into a lie. Inside, the department was holding a press conference. Isaiah didn't go in. He watched it from his phone. The video buffered once, then clicked to life. Behind a podium stood Officer Travis Boone, freshly shaved, in full dress blues, a ribbon on his chest like it gave him authority to kill. Boone cleared his throat. Yesterday evening, a young woman was stopped for a routine traffic violation. During the interaction, she became non-compliant and made a sudden move perceived as threatening. It is with great sadness that we confirm she was fatally shot during the ensuing struggle. Isaiah's jaw clenched. He rewound the clip and watched it again. No mention of Zoe's name. No mention of a body cam malfunction. No dash cam footage released. No call-in to dispatch at the time of the stop. Routine, Boone had said. Isaiah stared at his screen. Then he muttered, "There's nothing routine about killing someone who never made a wrong move." He left the truck, parked, and walked 2 blocks to Garrison's Hardware, an old storefront with peeling green paint and a cracked window that had never been replaced. The bell over the door jingled softly as he stepped inside. Marty Garrison stood behind the counter, sorting bolts into plastic drawers. The man was heavy-set now, gray in the beard, but his eyes were sharp and familiar. "Isaiah?" he said, surprised. Isaiah nodded. "Been a long time," Marty said, wiping his hands. "Heard about Zoe. I don't even know what to say." "Don't say anything yet," Isaiah replied. "Just answer something for me." Marty gestured toward the back, where an old office sat behind a curtain of bead strings. Isaiah followed. Inside, the air was cooler. A fan ticked on the filing cabinet. A dusty police radio, long disconnected, sat on a shelf. "I need access," Isaiah said, voice low. Marty frowned. "Access to what?" "Dispatch logs, from the night Zoe was killed." Marty hesitated. "You know I haven't worked in the department for over a decade. But you still fix their software. You help when things break." Marty rubbed his face. "Not officially." Isaiah leaned forward. "I'm not asking for dirt. I'm asking for truth." That word, truth, hung in the air like a challenge. Marty stared at him for a long moment. Then he sighed, pulled open a drawer, and took out a dusty laptop. "Give me a minute." The laptop was old but functional. Marty connected it to a secure server, one that mirrored the APD dispatch log. It wasn't legal, it wasn't even recent, but it had history. It had records. He typed in Zoe's license plate. Cross-referenced timestamps. Nothing. No traffic stop. No entry. No officer-initiated call from Boone or Fenn at that time in that location. "Could be a technical issue," Marty said, half-hearted. Isaiah shook his head. "They didn't call it in. Why the hell wouldn't they?" "Because they didn't want it on record." Marty sat back, his face paled. Isaiah stood, his voice steady now. "If there's no dispatch log, no report of the stop. Then by law, the encounter didn't happen." Marty whispered, "Jesus." Isaiah looked out the office window toward the street. "I'm going to need more than that," he said. Marty nodded slowly. "I know someone who might help. She's a reporter. Quiet, but she digs deep." "Name?" "Rachel Whitmore." Isaiah pulled out a notebook, wrote it down, then turned to leave. "Isaiah," Marty said, before he reached the door. "What are you planning to do?" Isaiah paused. "Shine light in the dark." Later that evening, Isaiah sat in his living room, lights off, watching the replay of the press conference again. Boone's words were rehearsed. Fenn stood behind him, stiff, eyes shifting like a man haunted. He paused the video, zoomed in. Fenn's badge number, his posture, his discomfort. "Guilt," Isaiah murmured. He knew that look. He'd seen it on soldiers who made the wrong call, pulled the trigger too fast, saw the truth too late. He stared at the screen. Fenn's the weak link. He opened a drawer in the coffee table, pulled out an old flip phone, one he used when he didn't want to be traced. He called the number Marty had scribbled on a sticky note. A woman answered. "This is Rachel. I was told you dig where others don't." A pause. "Depends who's asking." "My name's Isaiah Walker. My daughter was Zoe." A longer pause. "I saw the press conference," Rachel said. "I didn't believe a word." Isaiah nodded to no one. "Then maybe we can help each other." Rachel Whitmore worked out of a corner desk in a shared newsroom that looked more like a forgotten garage. Paint peeled off the walls. A coffee machine gurgled without producing anything drinkable. But the room had something most newsrooms had lost: integrity. She met Isaiah the next morning at a diner called Maple Brew Cafe, a small spot just outside town with red vinyl booths and old jazz playing low in the background. The kind of place where people still read newspapers and asked about your mama. Isaiah took a booth facing the window. Rachel arrived 5 minutes late, notebook already open, pen tucked behind her ear. She wore plain clothes, no blazer, no badge, just jeans, a dark hoodie, and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You're him," she said, sliding into the booth. Isaiah nodded. "You're her." Rachel offered a quick, dry smile. "Let's skip the small talk." She pulled out a recorder and set it on the table. "Mind?" Isaiah shook his head. "I've reviewed the press release. I've spoken to someone in dispatch. No one can explain why there's no record of the stop." "There is no record," Isaiah said, "because they didn't want one." Rachel tapped her pen. "You think it was premeditated?" "I think it was targeted. And when it went bad, they covered it up." Rachel leaned back. "What makes you so sure?" Isaiah pulled a flash drive from his coat pocket. "This. It's a mirror of the department logs. You won't find the stop. You won't find the call-in, because it's not there." Rachel inserted it into her laptop. Her brows knit together as she scrolled. "They made it disappear," she whispered. Isaiah nodded. She looked up at him. "You know this makes you a target, right?" "I was a target the day Zoe was born black in Georgia." Rachel closed the laptop. "Okay, Mr. Walker, let's get to work." That night, Isaiah drove past the spot where Zoe died. County Road 6 looked the same, trees leaning, windless. But he noticed something new, a small bouquet. Someone had placed flowers. Not many, but fresh. Isaiah parked, stepped out. The gravel crunched beneath his boots. He stood there in silence, the wind brushing his shoulders. Then headlights approached from the opposite direction. A beat-up truck slowed as it neared. The driver stared, then stopped. The man rolled down his window. "You the girl's father?" he asked. Isaiah nodded. The man hesitated, then said, "I was behind her that night, a ways back, saw the lights, heard the gunshots." Isaiah stepped closer. "Did you see what happened?" The man swallowed. "No, just flashes. But I know she didn't do nothing wrong. I could feel it." Isaiah reached into his coat. "Can I ask your name?" The man paused, then said, "Hank. Hank DeWitt." Isaiah nodded. "You willing to talk on record?" Hank looked at the flowers, then back at Isaiah. "Maybe it's time." Isaiah called Rachel. They met at Hank's place the next morning, a small, run-down farmhouse surrounded by fields and silence. Hank was nervous, chain-smoking, hands shaking, but his voice held. "I saw 2 cops. I saw them pull her out. She wasn't fighting. She wasn't yelling. She was just scared." Rachel recorded everything. Every stutter, every pause, every truth. When they finished, Hank sat back and wiped his eyes. I should have said something sooner. Isaiah said, "You're saying something now." Rachel packed up her gear. "With this and the dispatch logs, I can start pulling strings." Isaiah stood. "Start with the weakest one." "Fen?" she asked. He nodded. "He'll break." She studied him. "And Boone?" Isaiah's eyes darkened. "He'll lie until he can't." The cabin sat at the edge of an overgrown soybean field, just south of Ashfield's town limits. The land around it had been abandoned years ago. Too rocky to farm, too quiet for neighbors. It was the kind of place people forgot existed, perfect for someone who didn't want to be found. Isaiah Walker parked his truck by the tree line and cut the engine. He stepped out slowly, letting the late afternoon heat settle on his shoulders. Crickets chirped in lazy rhythm, and a soft breeze carried the smell of soil and pine. He adjusted the strap on his shoulder bag, tucked a recorder into his inside pocket, and made his way toward the porch. The man he'd come to see, Hank DeWitt, stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame with a beer in hand. His dog, a brown mutt with one eye, growled softly but didn't move. "You came alone?" Hank asked. Isaiah nodded. "I always do." Hank stepped aside. "Then, come on in." The inside of the cabin was cluttered but clean. A recliner sat next to a wood stove, surrounded by beer cans and old fishing magazines. The air smelled like tobacco and cedar. Isaiah sat across from Hank at a wobbly table. Hank pulled out another beer from a cooler and cracked it open. "I don't usually talk to reporters," he said. "I'm not a reporter," Isaiah replied. "You're worse. You're a father." Silence stretched between them. Hank took a long sip. "I didn't mean that ugly," he muttered. "Just, I know what it's like. I got a son. Somewhere." Isaiah didn't ask. Instead, he pulled the recorder from his coat pocket and placed it gently on the table. Hank stared at it like it might explode. "You don't have to speak if you don't want," Isaiah said. "But if you do, your words won't get twisted." Hank rubbed his hands together. His nails were black with oil, and his knuckles cracked with age. "It was dark," he started, "but not too dark to see what mattered." Isaiah leaned in. "I saw the girl's car pulled over. I was maybe 100 yards back. I slowed down, wasn't trying to snoop, just didn't want to get caught up in whatever was going on." He paused. "They had her out of the car already. One had her pinned over the hood. The other was inside, like he was looking for something. Did she resist?" "No, sir. She stood still. Even when they grabbed her, she didn't kick or scream. Just looked scared, real scared." Hank took another drink. "Then I heard the shot." He didn't look at Isaiah as he spoke. He looked at the wall, like the memory was burned there. Then another. Isaiah's hand balled into a fist under the table. "You didn't stop," he said quietly. Hank's jaw clenched. "No, I didn't." "Why not?" "Because I knew how this town works. Because I've seen what happens when you get in the middle." Isaiah nodded. Not in approval, in understanding. "You're here now," he said. "That's what matters." Hank swallowed hard. "Hell of a thing, though," he muttered. "I saw it happen, and still waited a week to open my damn mouth." Isaiah reached forward and turned off the recorder. "You spoke, and we've got it now." That evening, Isaiah met Rachel outside the Ashfield Gazette office. She leaned against her car, phone in hand, typing something fast. When he handed her the recorder, she played it back, right there in the parking lot. As Hank's voice filled the air, Rachel didn't speak. Her eyes sharpened. This is something," she said. He saw it. He confirmed she didn't fight back, that they searched without cause. Isaiah nodded. "And I have a feeling Boone's told himself the lie so many times, he'll slip up if pressed." Rachel tapped her phone. "I'll edit this into a short statement, overlay it with his official story, side by side. I know a few blogs that'll pick it up within hours." "Not enough," Isaiah said. "We need someone to break from the inside." "Fen?" "He's the crack. We just have to press." Rachel closed her laptop. "Let me make some calls." The next day, Isaiah drove past the police station again. He wasn't ready to confront Boone, not yet. But he parked around back in the employee lot and waited. It took 20 minutes before Derek Fenn exited through the side door, a coffee in one hand, keys in the other. His face was pale. His eyes darted like a man who no longer trusted what he saw. Isaiah stepped out of the truck. Fenn froze. "Mr. Walker," he said cautiously. "We need to talk," Isaiah said. Fenn looked toward the building, then back at Isaiah. "Not here," he whispered. They ended up at a picnic bench outside the Ashfield Town Park. Quiet, shaded, far from anyone who cared. Isaiah didn't raise his voice, didn't accuse, just asked questions. "You were there." Fenn nodded. "You saw what happened." Fenn looked away. "Why did you stay silent?" "I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice," Isaiah said. "And now there's a chance to make the right one." Fenn's voice was barely audible. "He said she went for something. I didn't see it, but—" "He yelled, so I reacted. When the shot went off, He stopped. "I knew it was wrong." Isaiah leaned forward. "Then say so." "I can't. My job, my pension, my daughter." Fenn closed his eyes. Isaiah stood. "You'll have to choose." Then he walked away, and behind him, Derek Fenn sat alone, coffee gone cold in his hand. That night, rain rolled in from the south. Isaiah sat on his front porch, watching the drops fall slow and heavy against the dusty ground. The rhythm reminded him of boot camp in Carolina. Midnight storms and quiet prayers whispered into wet pillows. He wasn't praying tonight. He was planning. The tape from Hank, the dispatch logs, Fenn's hesitation. Each piece was falling into place like puzzle corners, but one piece was still missing. Boone. The man walked around town like nothing happened, smiling, drinking coffee, waving at neighbors, wearing a badge he'd long since tarnished. Rachel called just before midnight. I put together a side-by-side video, Hank's statement next to Boone's press clip. It's getting traction online. Isaiah didn't answer right away. "You okay?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I'm steady." She paused, then said, "People are starting to notice." "Good. Make sure they don't stop." The next morning, Rachel forwarded a tip. "Someone saw Boone at a gas station last night, talking too much, drinking too much." Isaiah didn't hesitate. He got in his truck and headed out to the Silver Tap Bar on the edge of town, near the truck depot. Boone's kind of place. The parking lot was mostly empty, save for one cruiser and a rusted-out pickup. Inside, the bar smelled like sweat and stale beer. Country music played low. Boone sat at the counter, already 2 drinks in, nursing a whiskey with his badge still clipped to his belt. Isaiah took a stool a few seats down. Boone glanced over, blinked, and let out a bitter laugh. "Well, hell, didn't expect to see you here." Isaiah said nothing. Boone took another sip. "You think I wanted it to go down like that? You think I get off on that crap?" Isaiah tilted his head. "Do you?" Boone leaned in, voice slurring just enough to expose the truth. "She looked at me like I wasn't real, like I was just a uniform. That kind of look, it sticks with a man." Isaiah stared at him. "She didn't scream," Boone continued. "That's what gets me. She didn't scream, like she already knew how it would end." Isaiah's voice was calm. "And what did you do?" Boone blinked. "I ended it." The bartender looked up, uneasy. Boone waved him off. "Just talkin'." Isaiah stood, leaving a 20 on the counter. "You did more than talk," he said quietly. Boone didn't reply. He just looked away. Outside, Isaiah got back in his truck and turned on the recorder. Every word Boone had just said, captured. He sent the audio file to Rachel. "Put this next to the report," he texted. "Let people hear both stories." Later that evening, Isaiah returned to County Road 6. The flowers were still there. The wind was light, the sky painted in that deep southern orange just before nightfall. He knelt by the spot where Zoe had fallen. From his pocket, he pulled the folded slip of paper from her handwriting again. "Don't forget to breathe." He exhaled slowly. Then he whispered, "I won't," and walked back to the truck. Not because he was finished, but because he was almost ready. The gas station sat alone on Route 14, a blinking island of fluorescent light in a sea of nothing. It was the kind of place where truckers stopped for stale coffee, where nothing good ever happened after dark. Isaiah Walker had been there for nearly an hour. He sat in his truck with the window cracked, watching every vehicle that rolled in and out of the lot. The fuel pump beside him hissed quietly, the LED display blinking like a tired eye. Then just after 10, a cruiser pulled in. It was him. Officer Travis Boone stepped out, still in uniform, though his shirt was half untucked, and the night had left its mark on his face. Creased, slightly flushed, too casual for a man on duty. Isaiah watched him walk inside the mini-mart, grabbing a Gatorade, some jerky, and a pack of cigarettes. Boone paid with cash, exchanged a laugh with the clerk, then stepped back outside. He didn't notice Isaiah at first, not until Isaiah stepped out of the shadows, calm, deliberate, as if he were just another man fueling his car. Boone froze mid-step. "Evenin'," Isaiah said, his voice low but steady. Boone narrowed his eyes. "You following me?" Isaiah smiled faintly. "You're not that interesting." Boone scoffed. "Then what the hell do you want?" Isaiah tilted his head toward the pump. "Conversation." Boone laughed once. Dry, bitter. "I ain't in the mood for grief counseling." Isaiah took a step closer. "No grief, just facts." Boone glanced around. The lot was empty. The night was still. "I read the reports," Isaiah said. "I saw the footage, listened to your statements." Boone rolled his eyes. "You looking for closure? I told y'all what happened." "I'm not looking for closure," Isaiah said. "I'm looking for the truth." Boone turned to leave. "You ever wonder what happens when the story falls apart?" Isaiah called after him. Boone paused, hand on the door handle of his cruiser. "I got a recording," Isaiah said, "of Hank DeWitt. Says he saw everything." Boone didn't turn. Isaiah kept going. "Saw you pull her out. Said she didn't fight. Said you planted the knife." Now Boone turned. "You're bluffing." Isaiah took another step. "You've been bluffing since the day you pulled the trigger." Boone's jaw clenched. "She reached for something." "She reached for her voice. And you silenced it." Boone's shoulders squared. "You think I care what some drifter says he saw?" "No," Isaiah said. "But I think you care what people hear in your own voice." Boone frowned. Isaiah tapped his chest, where the tiny mic was clipped, hidden under his coat. "You're being recorded, officer." For a second, Boone said nothing. Then he laughed. "That's illegal. You're in a public space, and you're talking to a civilian. No law says I can't protect myself from lies." Boone took a step forward, eyes cold. "You threatening me?" Isaiah didn't move. "I'm reminding you. You can either live with what you did, or you can watch it take everything from you. Your job, your name, your pension, your peace." Boone's lip curled. "What do you want?" "Confession." "Not gonna happen." Isaiah nodded once. "Then I'll let the tape speak for itself." He turned to leave. Boone called out, "You think you're some kind of hero?" Isaiah paused. "No." He looked back over his shoulder. "I'm just a father who still hears his daughter's voice." The next morning, Rachel played the audio in her office. Boone's voice came through, clear, arrogant, unmistakable. Isaiah sat across from her, arms crossed. "He gave you enough," Rachel said. "Not a full confession, but enough to start a fire." Isaiah nodded. "Let it burn." Rachel's fingers flew across the keyboard. "I'll cut it into a timeline. Hank's story, Fenn's hesitation, Boone's arrogance. I've got national contacts now." Isaiah stood. "Push it." Rachel looked up. "Are you ready for what comes next?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." Later that day, the Ashfield Police Department was quiet. Too quiet. Inside, Derek Fenn sat at his desk, hands trembling. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. The clip was everywhere, his face in the background of Boone's lies, his silence louder than any gunshot. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. "You need to talk," Isaiah's voice said. Fenn didn't reply. "You know it's coming. The clip, the articles, the questions." Fenn swallowed. "They'll fire me." "They might." "They'll ruin me." "They already did." Silence. Then Fenn said, "Meet me. Tonight. Alone." Isaiah didn't ask where. He already knew. That evening they met at Zoe's grave. The sky was purple, stars beginning to blink alive. Fireflies danced above the grass, the air still and heavy. Fenn stood with his hands in his pockets, staring at the headstone. "I watched them put her in the ground," he said, "and I knew I'd helped do it." Isaiah said nothing. "I didn't pull the trigger, but I didn't stop him, and I didn't speak up. I froze." Isaiah studied him. "I didn't come for an apology," he said. "I came for truth." Fenn took a deep breath. Boone pulled her over because he thought she didn't belong on that road. He didn't call it in. Told me not to. Said it was just a talk. Then he started searching her car without cause. She said no. He didn't care. Fenn's voice cracked. She never touched him, never raised her voice. When he shoved her, I should have stepped in. He wiped his face. When the shot went off, I didn't even know what happened. Just sound, then blood. Isaiah nodded. "I'll testify," Fenn said. "I'll give a statement, on the record." Isaiah's voice was soft. "Do it for her, not for me." Fenn looked at the headstone. "I will." The fallout was immediate. Rachel published the piece within 24 hours. Headline bold, uncompromising, "Lies on County Road 6, What Really Happened to Zoe Walker." The article spread like fire. Local blogs picked it up first, then state news, and finally national outlets. It had everything: an anonymous witness, conflicting statements, audio of Boone's drunken admissions, and a sworn affidavit from Officer Derek Fenn. It was no longer just a tragic incident. It was a scandal. Ashfield police released a formal statement by noon claiming they were cooperating fully with an independent investigation. The mayor of Ashfield, who hadn't said a word in a week, called for administrative leave pending review. Boone was suspended. Fenn was reassigned pending internal inquiry. The community erupted. Protesters gathered at City Hall, holding signs with Zoe's name. "Say her name" rang through the streets. News vans parked outside the police department. Strangers left flowers on Isaiah's porch. A mural of Zoe went up on the wall of her old high school, the outline of her face surrounded by sunflowers. But Isaiah stayed quiet. Not because he was done, because he wasn't. Rachel found him at the diner 3 days later, still sitting in the same booth, sipping black coffee like it held the weight of everything he'd lost. "They're opening a grand jury," she said, sliding into the booth. Isaiah nodded. "I don't know what they'll decide," she said. "But you cracked the wall." "I didn't crack it," he said. "Zoe did." Rachel smiled faintly. "You still want to attend the hearing?" "I'll be there," Isaiah said. "Not for them, for her." Rachel looked down. "You know, I cover a lot of pain, a lot of ugliness, and I try not to get too close. But this one," Isaiah looked up. "This one made you stay," he finished. She nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. Isaiah reached into his coat and placed something on the table, the tape recorder. "This belongs in your archive," he said, "but only if you promise one thing." Rachel looked at him. "Tell it straight," he said. "No edits, no angles." She picked it up gently. "I will." The grand jury convened 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Press, activists, families from other towns who'd lost children the same way. Rachel sat near the front with her laptop open. Isaiah sat by himself, 2 rows from the back, hands clasped, eyes forward. He didn't care about the legal jargon, the motions, the objections. He waited for one thing: truth. Fenn took the stand. His voice didn't shake this time. He looked Boone in the eye when he told the story, the real one. Boone stared forward, expression blank, jaw clenched. Hank DeWitt testified next. Then Rachel submitted the recordings, the one from the bar, the one from the graveyard, the logs, the lack of calls, the absence of reports. By the end of the second day, the court was silent. On the third day, the jury returned. Travis Boone was indicted for second-degree murder and obstruction of justice. Derek Fenn was placed on probation, stripped of his badge but not imprisoned. His cooperation had spared him that. Isaiah didn't smile, didn't stand. He just closed his eyes and whispered, "She can rest now." It had been 3 months since the indictment. Ashfield had changed, not in the way that made headlines, but in quiet, stubborn ways, like old paint slowly peeling to reveal something truer underneath. Boone's trial date was set for fall. The town buzzed with questions. Some neighbors stopped speaking to each other. Others knocked on Isaiah Walker's door just to say they were sorry for what happened, for what they didn't do, for not believing sooner. Isaiah didn't hold grudges, but he didn't forget. The courtroom that day was cooler than expected. The air conditioning hummed louder than the judge's voice. Reporters scribbled notes. A sketch artist shaded Boone's face, careful to catch the tension in his jaw. Isaiah sat in the gallery, 2 rows behind the prosecution, hands folded. He didn't blink much. He didn't move. The jury watched him almost as much as they watched the lawyers. Boone pled not guilty. His defense leaned hard on fear. She was reaching, they said. She was aggressive. She was non-compliant. But then came the footage. The witness statements, Fenn's tearful confession, Rachel's report verified airtight. Boone never took the stand. The defense rested, and the jury deliberated. It took them less than 5 hours. Guilty, second-degree murder. Guilty, obstruction. Boone didn't flinch. Isaiah did, just once. A breath, the first real one in months. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Boone got 25 years without parole. Some called it justice. Others called it a start. Isaiah didn't call it anything. He just went home. The day after sentencing, Isaiah stood on County Road 6 again. This time, he wasn't alone. A small crowd gathered by the marker where Zoe died. Someone had added wind chimes. Others brought sunflowers. A local pastor said a few words, but Isaiah didn't speak. He stood off to the side, head bowed, hands in his pockets. When the crowd thinned, Rachel approached. "You did what you came to do," she said. Isaiah shook his head. "I did what I had to do." Rachel smiled. "So what now?" Isaiah looked up at the trees, the same ones that had watched his daughter's last breath. "I don't know," he said, "but I can breathe again." That evening, he drove to Lula's house, the same small home with yellow shutters and a hummingbird feeder by the porch. She opened the door before he knocked, like she knew. They didn't say much. She hugged him. He let her. Then they sat at the kitchen table, shared a plate of fried catfish, and listened to a gospel tape Zoe had made when she was 12. The tape crackled. Her voice, sweet, off-key, filled the room. And Isaiah Walker smiled. Not because the pain was gone, but because the silence had finally lifted.